questions that my generations are asking are the following. If I may summarize, it is not understanding how Africa, with so many riches on our soil, with a generous nature of water, abundant sunshine. Africa is today the poorest continent. Africa is a hungry continent. And how is it that we, as heads of state, travel the world begging? These are questions we are asking ourselves, and for which we have no answers so far. We have the opportunity to forge new relationships, and I hope these relationships can be the best to provide a better future for our peoples. My generation also asks me to say that due to this poverty, they are forced to cross the ocean to try to reach Europe. They die in the ocean, but soon they will not cross because they will come to our palaces to seek their daily sustenance.
There's something about this dude that just makes me want to support him and root for him. He's different. He's benevolent, but in the inside, I can see that fierceness that'll come out at any time if he has to bring it out. And what I like about this dude is he stands out. When he's standing with the other leaders, he's not submissive. He's not docile. He's one, if not higher. And I like this fucking dude. And I've been on a binge just watching a lot of his interviews, watching how structured and calculated and stoic he is when he talks. And it brings inspiration to me because the people have been propagandizing his country and trying to come in there and try to take him out. But he's been so influential that he's been influencing people like Russia, influencing people like Korea, even China. People all across the world have been giving this man support. And a lot of people in our country, one being our country, one being France, a lot of the westernized countries are being sneaky and trying to propagandize him, saying that he's getting influenced by Russia so they can have some kind of energetic to kill him and take him out. And we're starting to see what these people be doing. They be lying. They be disingenuous. And I hope that this gravitates towards Black Americans. We don't need any fucking cringe Black conservatives like Candace Owens, Brandon Tatum. Those people just serve whites so they can get paid. They don't give about progress or nothing. They don't want you to succeed. They don't want you to do anything. They just want to yap and get that check. We definitely don't need no liberal Blacks. They don't give a fuck. They want to do is complain and blame and say, we had this a long time ago and do the blame game. We need someone like him. Someone that wants to fight. Someone that wants to get his people educated, be smarter, be better, have money. I want to see this shit, bro. This dude is a fucking, I don't know what it is. It's like God sent this guy or something. Cause I can feel that something about this dude's energy is just different.
This why you ain't got no choice but to love Ibrahim Traoré.
Now, let's talk about what's really happening in Africa, specifically in Burkina Faso, under the leadership of Ibrahim Traoré. Now, you may agree or disagree with the way he came into power or how he's governing, but one thing you cannot ignore is the message he's sending to the world. Africa wants to be free. When Ibrahim Traoré speaks, you don't hear a typical African head of state making the usual polished, vague speeches written for Western approval. You hear a man who sounds genuinely angry at exploitation, at manipulation, and at the way Africa has been forced into a corner for generations. And honestly, many people share that anger. One of the loudest messages coming from Traoré and his supporters is that Africa is rich, but Africans are poor. Rich in gold, oil, minerals, fertile land, and sunshine, but still begging for aid. Why is that? Why does a continent with so much natural wealth remain trapped in poverty? Its leaders flying around the world asking for help. According to Traoré, it's not because Africa can't succeed, but it's because external powers won't let it. He calls it what it is: neocolonialism, a modern-day slavery masked under diplomacy, trade deals, military cooperation, and development aid. Burkina Faso, he says, is facing the most violent and barbaric form of this control, and he's not wrong. When a nation can't even choose its own friends or make its own decisions without someone in Washington, Paris, or Brussels raising eyebrows, how is that independence?
If you don't know who Ibrahim Traoré is, I highly recommend that you pick up some books and learn things about places that you have not been to, but that likely somewhere in your lineage, someone you are related to has helped in the pillaging of that country. As a diasporic African, I would like to just give a word of caution to everybody in the West. Because y'all have had privilege and luxury for a very long time, and you don't realize it because at the same time, simultaneously, you have also lived in poverty and deprivation. And most of that depravity happens to be in education. You've been heavily deprived of the gift of actual education and knowledge and history and culture. So I want to share with all of you something, because right now there is still something called NATO. And right now, colonizers still want to maintain power and still want to remain in control of the situation that is collapsing extremely quickly and not in their favor. And as people who are part of the core of the empire, currently I am speaking to specifically North Americans, Canadians, Americans, but even somewhat to some of the Europeans. A lot of African countries have mandatory draft. I need you to think about this. I need you to go online and Google the different populations in Africa. And I need you to look up this, because they have something called a mandatory military draft, where at the very least, most of the capable men of the population are put into intensive military service and training for a period of time, and then remain essentially on reserve if they're called back. And on that note, I'd like you to look up how many successful military missions Canada and the United States were involved in. I'll give you a minute to look it up. You can pause and come back. But if you do some math, okay, and you watch what the West is doing and the threats that they are giving Ibrahim Traoré, and the fact that we as Africans are telling you that having been totally screwed over and watching many of our governments get toppled over and over and over, this is not a one-time thing, by Western colonialist countries, and seeing all of us say, united in one, one continent, so multiple countries with mandatory military drafting, okay? Military service. Seeing all of those people come and say, you fuck with Ibrahim, you fucking with all of us? And I say this as a displaced individual in the West, from Africa. Baby, the West is on the losing side. Big time. And y'all were worried about like double W3 being with Russia or China or whatever. This will include both of those countries and an entire continent. Potentially a lot of Asian countries too. So if you think your letters and your screaming have not been making a lot of dents with your government officials, I think it's time to panic and, act with a little bit more urgency. Because none of y'all are ready for this. Word for the wise.
Look at the outrage every time Burkina Faso signs a deal with Russia. Suddenly, people in the West start crying out about human rights violence, terrorism risks, and bad governance. But where were these same voices when France extracted gold, uranium, and other resources from West Africa for decades, while the people lived in poverty? Where was the global concern when African soldiers died in wars that weren't theirs, when they were dragged into conflicts in Europe and then sent back home with nothing? And now Traore wants to change that. He's pushing for self-reliance, industrialization, food security, and military independence. He's asking why African leaders need to keep running to Europe or the US to solve their problems when they could easily gather in an African city and talk amongst themselves. But instead, we see these same leaders waiting for a red carpet invitation to European conferences where they give speeches for applause and photo ops, but bring home nothing for their people. Traore is trying to build a different path. He's creating new partnerships that don't come with the same historical baggage. That's why he's aligning more closely with Russia and why he's being attacked for it. But isn't Burkina Faso a sovereign state? Doesn't it have the right to choose who it partners with? Apparently not, according to some in the West, because suddenly media headlines start to paint Traores as radical, pro-Russia, or even dangerous. And now we hear whispers of foreign generals talking about Burkina Faso's gold, questioning how much they have, and making wild claims about how it's being used. Why are they so interested? What business is it of theirs? One of the most painful parts of this story is how some Africans are used against other Africans. It's one thing to be undermined by outsiders, but when your own people are sent to weaken you, it cuts deep. Traore and his supporters say this tactic has been used before, using black men to destroy other black men. It happened in Libya. It happened during the colonial era. It even happened in old Hollywood movies, where black characters were always the traitors, the criminals, or the ones pulling each other down. And we still see it today. Africans turning against each other, repeating the same scripts written by foreign powers. Then there's the controversy with Human Rights Watch. According to sources, they start a campaign accusing Traore of unaliving his own people and abusing human rights. But where were these human rights organizations when France, Britain, Portugal, Germany committed atrocities in Africa? Where were they when Ruto's government faced serious accusations? Why are they silent on those cases but loud when it comes to Burkina Faso?
Now, this was his speech that he gave in Russia. I'm not here to beg for financial aid. Africa already so rich, they ain't got to beg nobody for nothing. I keep telling y'all, the world need Africa. I'm here to discuss for a partnership in areas of technology, energy, science, and education. Now, come on now. Tell me that don't sound like a real leader, a real man. Why you think all these other great leaders are coming together and they actually having real discussions and are actually changing the world? And I can't wait till BRICS is worth way more than what the dollar will ever be, because they getting ready to crash. Africa money will be backed by gold, unlike this American dollar, for entertainment purposes only, in case TikTok want to get mad. This is why I stand with this great brother, man. Y'all just don't understand how great life could be. If we all was to go back to Africa like they tell us, I guarantee you, boy, Babylon will fall so fast, they'll be begging us to come back. Real talk, man. Y'all got to start thinking outside of the box. This young brother right here is what we've been waiting on. He's sparking something in every individual that look like us out here. Like, we got ones waking up. And guess what? In 2026, when Trump get ready to cut this housing projects and everything like that, where people got to start paying this hot rent, yeah, y'all gonna wish y'all was in Africa getting free housing, free medicine, free education, actually coming together and helping build up Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Ghana. Yo, man, it's time for us to start using our brain. Real talk.
I just watched President Traore's speech. This man is so wise, it's not even funny, all right? Mr. President, you said that they want to control your resources and then your youth is forced to migrate over there to make a living. You are absolutely right. On top of it, what they do to those people that migrate here, it's shameful. They send ICE to detain them and to deport them. These days, they don't even send back to the original country. They send them to El Salvador. I am the prime example of how ruthless America has become. I married a US citizen 14 years ago, and they still detained me back in Hawaii, and they tried to deport me. Yeah, they treat like shit anybody who they think they're below them. I applaud you, Mr. President Traoré, for standing up to them.
Traore supporters say it clearly. These organizations do not work in Africa's best interest. They only speak when their founders are uncomfortable. They ignore real injustice, but quickly mobilize when a leader refuses to obey Western instructions. The fighters on the ground in Burkina Faso, many of them civilians who volunteered to protect their villages, are being called militias by the international community. But let's be honest, when Europeans take up arms to defend their homes, they are called patriots. Why is it different when Africans do it? Isn't it the same desire to protect your land, your family, and your people? This double standard is one of the things Traore is exposing. He's saying, we are not children, we are not your property, we are not your puppets. We will make our own decisions, even if you don't like them. And for that, he's being demonized. But here is what we have to ask ourselves. Why does it bother the world so much when an African leader wants to stand on its own 2 feet? Why does food independence, industrial development, and national dignity trigger so many attacks? Is it because independence is a threat? Is it because a self-reliant African means less cheap labor, fewer stolen resources, and fewer markets to dump low-quality goods? And let's not forget the youth. The same young people dying in the Mediterranean trying to reach Europe, many of them left because their countries offered no hope. But that is exactly what Traore is trying to change. He wants to build a nation where young people don't need to run away to survive, where they can farm, build, learn, and thrive at home. But this kind of vision requires sacrifice. It requires facing accusations, betrayal, and threats. And that is why the African people must stand up, not just for Traore, but for any leader who is trying to shake off the chains of neocolonialism. Because let's be real, Traore could be next in a long line of African heroes who are taken out, not by their own people, but by those who fear what Africa could become if truly united and stood tall. Now, guys, I want to know what you think about this. Please drop a comment and also remember to subscribe, like, and share as well. And until next time, bye-bye.